Hello, fellow wanderers. My name is Endry, and thank you for joining me as we wander through a bit more of EQ Titan, a new player tutorial. In today's video, we're going to be covering automatically logging in your characters through the use of a batch file. To start, you're going to need to have done a few things beforehand. You're going to have created all of your characters, and once that's done, you'll need to have used the #register command on each character to register it to your EQ Titan forum account. In addition, you will also have downloaded WinEQ2 and installed it, as well as the macro quest through Killian's for E3 that was provided in a link in an earlier video. Also, you'll want to have gotten the MQ2 auto login from MMO Bugs, as well as the MQ2 EQBCS from the MMO Bugs build. To start off, let's go over setting up your client here real quick, because there is one change we're going to have to make. So go ahead and open up your EQ client directory. Go ahead and scroll down, and what you're looking for here is the EQ host. So let's see if I can find it here. EQ host. Go ahead and open that up, and you want it to match what I've got here on the screen. Host equals login.eqtitan.com : 5999. Go ahead then and save it. And then that's all we really need out of this directory here. So you can go ahead and close this down. Now then, with that set up, what that does is it lets you log into the EQ Titan private login server. Anytime the EQ Titan server is up, that login server will also be up, which makes it considerably more reliable than the EQ emulator server. And it means that you don't have to worry about changing server numbers later on. So moving on, we're going to move on to WinEQ2. So go ahead and browse to your WinEQ2 install directory, find your WinEQ2 executable, right-click, go to Properties, go ahead and go over to Compatibility, and make sure that it's being run as an administrator. Once you're done, click OK, and then double-click that to actually launch WinEQ2. In this case, it's going to put a little WinEQ2 program in your taskbar, right-click it, go into Options, and go to Preferences. Once you're in Preferences, this screen is going to pop up. Go up to WinEQ 2.0, expand it, and go to General. Make sure that Set CPU Affinity is on. This just deals with a headache of having to manually set CPU affinities inside the ini file, and it's one of the chief reasons I use this particular program. Once that's done, go ahead and go down to EverQuest, expand it out, and go to General. Turn off all of these. None of them serve any purpose with the particular programs we're running, so you don't need to have them on. EQ Play Nice especially needs to be off. After that's done, and by the way, make sure to click Apply, go ahead and go to Profiles, expand them out, and you're going to see a list here. It's going to look a little bit different than mine. You're going to see a bunch of these profiles with numbers, and up here it'll say WinEQ2 default profile. Go ahead and click one of those, and we're going to go down line by line as to what you need to set up here. Now, I've mentioned a high memory and a low memory configuration for EverQuest clients. If you're only running a single client folder right now, this would be the point where I would recommend making a second one. Just copy the client folder with the new EQ host, make a brand new folder for your low memory configuration, and go ahead and paste it, and go ahead and keep that in mind. That way you don't have to come back here and change this later. If you don't want to use a low memory configuration, then go ahead and ignore that step, and we'll just move on. So up at the top here, name. This is going to be the profile name that actually appears in WinEQ2. So if you right-click WinEQ2 and go to EverQuest, it's these names here, and now you can see all my character names. You can create a desktop shortcut from here, but it's not important. So go ahead and put your name here. I suggest your character name. It makes it easier to remember for our later steps. Window title is whatever you want to appear at the top as the window title. I also use character name here because I know what my character classes are, but if you aren't familiar with them or you just want to name them by character class, you could do that as well. It's useful when you're alt-tabbing between characters. EverQuest path. This is going to be a little different for everybody. Me, I've got Dreed set up as my high memory character. He's my tank, so I want him to be able to see everything. So I go ahead, click the little box here, and browse to your client directory. In this case, for me, it's inside of the EQ high mem on my C drive, which is my solid state drive. Once you've got that set up, EQ client.ini you leave alone. Sound, I suggest only one character ever has this set for on. usually your tank. All the rest of this you can leave alone. Global activation hotkey, if you don't want to be like me and alt-tab through your characters, you can set up universal hotkeys to pull up windows. In this case, I have it set for number pad 1, but I don't ever actually use that. I should probably just get rid of it. Once you're done, before you move on to the next profile, click Apply. Otherwise, it undoes all this work and you have to redo it. Let's move on to Hippity here. Hippity is my low memory character, so as you can see, I've set him to my low mem directory. Ignore this high mem part. I was just too lazy to rename the folder after I got done pasting it. And continue on. Always apply after each character and decide which characters you want to be able to see everything. I recommend your main tank, your secondary tank, and a couple of pullers. So I would pause the video here and go through that. It will take a few minutes. And when you're done, we're going to move on. All right. There is, by the way, a hotkeys thing if you want to set up particular hotkeys for it. I don't find any of these particularly useful, except maybe the Control-Alt-R here, which resets the windows to their default positions, helps hide away some of those title bars that if you don't want them on your screen. But other than that, we're done with WinEQ2 for now. Oh, and by the way, the order of the characters here doesn't matter. We'll get into that a little bit later. So go ahead, and once you're done, click OK, close it down, and we're not going to use this window anymore, so I'm going to just pull it over here. And now we're going to look at your MQ2 directory. And there are a few things we want to make sure of here. First things first, go ahead and find your MacroQuest 2. Right-click it, go to Properties, Compatibility, ROS Administrator. And then we're going to look for MQ2 EQBCS. Right-click it, go to Properties, Compatibility, ROS Administrator. This just helps deal with some errors later. Next, we're going to go to our MacroQuest INI, open that up, scroll down until we find the thing that says Plugins, right here. And then at the bottom here, you're probably not going to have this yet, but what you want to do is you want to add this line, MQ2 auto login equals MQ2 auto login. That's going to turn on the auto login plugin when you log into MQ2. Anytime you want to turn that off, you can turn it off by unloading it inside the game, but normally when you're loaded in characters and you want to turn it back on, you want to do it before you log in, so you can just put it in the ini file there. Now, we're going to look for a particular file here, and as you can see, there's the mq2 autologin.dll, and some of you might already have something that says mq autologin. There's no extension on mine because I don't show the ini file extensions, but it would be a .ini file. If you don't have one, that's all right. Just open up a blank notepad and we'll continue on from there. So over here, I've got that blank notepad. So in here, you're going to want to copy what I've got here. And I'm going to go through this line by line so you know what's going on. Settings just tells the particular program or DLL that we're using the settings section. Kick active character equals 1. It kicks your characters if you try to log in another one. It's good for if your client crashes. Instant camp equals 0. I just don't mess with it. If you set that to 1, then your characters camp instantly. Probably a good thing. Use station names instead of sessions. If it's 1, you can actually change these names here to be your logins, and you can omit this line here. I have found no real use for this, but someone might be able to correct me in the comments. Debug equals 1. I just leave it alone. Any location. This needs to equal your MQ2 folder. So easy thing to do is if you've got this open still, go ahead, copy this from the top, paste it here, and make sure you have mq2 autologin.ini. Pre-server delay equals 1000. It puts a 10-second delay for your logging into the server, and the server delay is another 10-second delay built in so that when you log in, you're not going to get a bunch of people in at once, which can cause a crash due to memory allocation errors. I just set these both to 1000 and it works out perfectly with something we're going to do later. So that's my recommendation. If you don't have a problem with loading a bunch of clients at once and having them crash, you can leave those out, but it's really a very minor delay. Servers, this tells you your server selection. You want this to be 23 equals EQ Titan. The private login server, it's always going to be 23. Cool. Session 1. So, first thing we're going to do, station name equals whatever your station name is. Set your password to your EQ Titan forum password. Not your EQ emulator password in case those were different, but your EQ Titan forum password. Server set to EQ Titan. And then once you've done that, go ahead, select all of that, copy it, and go ahead and paste it. And you're going to make an additional copy for every character you're going to log in. Now, order is important here. I recommend that you put these in order of group. Which client logs in first in the group isn't important, but make sure your first 6 characters are your first group, your second 6 characters are your second group. It'll come up later as to why you want to do that, but it just makes things simpler in the long run. So go ahead and make an additional copy of this for every character you've got. If you're running 18 clients, you need 18 of these 2424. Pretty self-explanatory. When you get to them, what you need to change is their session. So go ahead and increment it one by one. And then, of course, you want to make sure you have the correct login name and your character name. Do spell this correct. It is important. So you might want to pause here and do that. And then when you come back, we'll talk about how to save this. All right, so you're back with me. Once you've got all of that filled out, you want to go ahead and go save as. You're going to want to call this MQ2 autologin.ini. And make sure down here you've got this set for all files, and make sure this is in your Killian's MQ2 folder here. Or really, it's wherever you've got this little gem here, but you do want it in your MacroQuest folder because otherwise the DLL is not going to be able to find it. So once you're done with that, you can go ahead and close it. I'm going to leave it up here just for the moment, just in case, but I'm going to pull it off to the side here. All right, most of the work is done. The next thing we're going to do is just a lot of retyping information. So we're going to go out to the EQ Titans forum and we're going to find a post here. And the post here is by Sorvani. And Sorvani was kind enough to make a batch file that you can use with WinEQ2 to log in your characters. So I'm going to post a link to the bottom in the description as normal. You're going to scroll down until you find Sorvani's post. You're going to highlight all of this code here. Go ahead and copy it, and then open up Notepad here and paste it. And now this is a little intimidating for people who haven't done batch files before, which is to say it was intimidating for me when I first did this. So I'm going to go through this line by line so you know what's important and what's not. Echo off, leave it alone. C:. Okay, this is your root directory for the drive where you've got MQ2 and WinEQ2 loaded. And most people keep those on the same drive. I keep them on my data drive and not my solid state drive, but it doesn't really matter. And anyway, make sure that this matches the correct drive. So for me, that's my D drive, my data drive, and move on. This line here, you're going to leave it alone. But basically what this is saying is create a prompt with a particular delay. And if they say yes, do this. If they say no, which is error level 2 here, go to G1, which is down here with the :G1. So this is saying, do you want to launch WinEQ2, MQ2, and EQBC? Go ahead and leave that alone. We don't need to touch it, but it's really useful later if you've rebooted your machine or you're not running these programs between play sessions. This echo line here is just going to tell you what the command prompt is going to display. And now we get to the first thing that we really need to edit. So let's go over here. I'm going to pull this back because we're going to need it here in a minute. CD, change directory to this directory in the root drive. This is probably not the same for you. If you're like me, you've got this loaded into a program files window because there's no reason not to. There's nothing you need to change in WinEQ2 that requires special permissions. So this line here is going to be important in a moment. So let's copy that. And then we're going to go to edit. We're going to go to replace, and we're going to paste that there. And then we're going to go up here, and we're going to highlight this on our WinEQ2 directory here. You can see my program files here. Copy that, paste it. Now, for this one, we don't need the D drive. Let's get rid of that for the moment. But there is something we do have to change. This batch file does not like spaces. So anytime you've got a space between words in a name of a directory, go ahead and go all the way through it and put quotes before the word and after the whole phrase. And we're going to go replace all, close that. And as you can see here, all of the CD program, all the CD WinEQ2s have been changed to this directory, which is going to save us a lot of time in the long run. Now then, let's move on. This is basically just to get you in the right place. So let's move on to the next line. C drive, and this is actually, you notice this has changed most of this code. It's mostly correct. But let's go ahead, select that, copy, go to replace, paste it up here, and we're going to paste it down here. But we do want to change one thing. If you're not on the C drive, you're going to want to change this letter to whatever drive it is. If you are on your C drive, you can just leave this one alone. It's not a big deal. All right, moving on. We're going to have to go and look at MacroQuest again. So you saw how I did this here, where you can just go up to this top bar, click it, and copy and paste. In this case, when we move on to this next line here, launching MQ2 and the CD, EQ, yada, 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 we're going to do the same thing we did before. And let me see if I've still got my MQ2 up. I do. So that's going to be this folder here. Go ahead, find it, copy, and let's see. Oh, actually, I got ahead of myself there. Copy this line here first. Copy. Go to replace. Get rid of that. Paste that there. Go ahead. Copy this. Paste it here. We don't need the D drive as per normal. And as usual, we're going to put quotes around anything that has spaces in it. Place all. Okay. And in all reality, you don't really do this very much. If you just want to do those manually, you can. But there you go. That'll put it here. That'll replace it here, except of course, I want to make this my D drive because it's on my D drive. And always make sure that macroquest2.exe is at the end. This next one, launching EQBCS. Go ahead, make sure that you've got your drive letter correct. And at the end here, because we're using the updated one, go ahead and put MQ2 EQBCS.exe. All right, the easy part's done. So all this, by the way, this stuff, the ping localhost, don't worry about that. It's not important. It's just for the program to verify that things are working correctly. All right, group one, we are just getting started here. So your CD here should already be directed to the program files, etc., etc., etc. That's good. Do you want to launch group one? Yes, we do want to launch group one. Error level 2, go to G2. You can see here we've got G2. So if you don't want to load group 1 and you do want to load group 2, you can skip it. The way we're setting up the auto login DLL though, you're never going to want to skip groups because it's just not going to work out well. All right, here's the part where we have to do a lot of editing. Sorry, it's kind of annoying. Here, put your tune name. That's just what it's going to tell you it's launching which tune. And here, we're going to put the WinEQ profile name. So if you remember, when we were doing WinEQ2, here, I said that these are the names of your characters or your profiles. So these are the names that are important. Now, the thing you have to make sure of is that these load in the exact same order as your MQ2 autologin.ini. So that's why I suggested you set them up in group order ahead of time because of this particular setup. So if you've done that, you're going to go ahead and put the character's name here where the X was, put the profile name here, and then we're going to change one tiny little bit of code here. And this is a personal preference thing. If you don't want to do this or your system's pretty powerful, don't bother. But here underneath the null, go ahead and put a line and go ahead and we're going to put in timeout space /t space and 10. This puts a 10-second delay between launching clients. This just helps prevent crashes. I find it quite useful. You may or may not need this, but since you've already got a delay on the logins on the server, it doesn't hurt to put it there. And it can save you a lot of trouble. And we're going to want to put this after every single situation of null. If you're clever, you can put in the break and do the find replace, but if you just copy and paste this line and you just paste it as you go along, it shouldn't be too problematic. So go ahead and you're going to fill those out with all of your names for your characters. But wait a minute, we don't have anything after G3 down here. What do? Well, it's pretty simple. Take this whole block of text here, copy it, go down here, paste it. All right, so now we have G3, except this says group 2. So let's change that to group 3. And let's change that from go to G3 to G4. And down here, let's put a G4. Oh, I can type today, I swear. Go ahead and put G4 down there. And you can continue to do this. Just remember to increment the number here, until you've got all your groups. And then just for, ease of the program, just end it with the next group sequentially, but you don't have to put an end script or anything. It's smart enough to shut itself down. So pause here, and when you get back, I'll show you how to save this. All right, so you've got all of your characters put into your toon name here, your profile name here, and they're all matching your MQ2 INI file. So we're going to go save as here. We're going to make sure that this is set for all files, and we're just going to name this whatever you want. EQ start, and then put a .bat, and save this wherever you'd like, preferably on your desktop where it's easy to get to. I have problems with my desktop, so I don't save it there. But either way, save the file, and we're going to go see if it works. So you're done here, so we're going to close that out. I'm just going to put it to the side here. And in my case, which one do I want to use? Let's pull this one back. In my case, I have mine saved to my HiMem folder because of my problems with my desktop. But here you see a batch file. Double click that. You see a prompt. Do you wish to launch these? Sure, I'll launch them. It's not going to hurt. It'll tell you when EQ2 is already running, but no problem. Do you want to launch group 1? I don't, so I'm just going to hit no. And when you see when it finishes, it closes out automatically. So go ahead and run that once. Make sure it's working properly. Babysit it to make sure that you can click through any prompts that show up, like that stupid little survey thing that might show up if you've made a second client. And after that, you're all set up. Your character should log them all in, and it should give you enough time to go make a cup of coffee if you need one. So, in this video, I mentioned making a second client to sort of give you a reduced memory profile and CPU usage. In the next video, I'm going to go over how to set that up. So, until our paths cross again, be safe and have fun, everyone.